Hey Sean, how's it going?
I've been better. In lockdown, I'm either okay-ish or completely consumed by anxiety.
I feel you on that. Lately, I've been using GritX when I'm feeling anxious. It's a free app full of mental health tools and exercises. Want to hear some tips I learned?
Please.
Okay. 1. When you feel overwhelmed, focus on what you can control. Register to vote, volunteer somewhere, wear a mask, whatever it is.
I like that.
2. When you start worrying about the future, take deep breaths and stay in the moment. GritX's Catch Your Breath feature has been super helpful. See? You got it. Okay, lastly, don't judge yourself by what you think you should be doing. Meet yourself where you're at and go from there.
Wow, thank you.
GritX actually reminded me to call you. It suggested I connect with my friends even though we're social distancing.
Thanks. I'm glad you reached out.
Just remember, whether it's calling a friend or logging on to GritX, help is always there for you. We got this. Together.
As we find ourselves in a global pandemic, we also find ourselves in the mental health crisis as well, where access to quality, resiliency, and well-being skills are more important than ever.
There's always been a lack of access. We think that the lifetime risk of acquiring a mental health diagnosis is 50%. So 1 out of 2 of us will suffer. 3/4 of that is present by the age of 24, but probably only about 1 out of 5 people even have access to qualified mental health services. So that was sort of what originally was driving creating scalable services. But then when you have the pandemic, when people are reporting 8 times the level of mental distress compared to a year ago. The clinical diagnoses of clinical depression and anxiety is triple. Divorce rates are up well over 30%. So it's more timely now than ever. This is as much a mental health pandemic as it is an infectious disease pandemic. I think this has really brought well-being into the forefront. People are much more willing to talk about their emotional stress, the impact of sheltering in place, and people are reporting levels of stress and distress. And GritX really offers people the opportunity to acquire all of the skills one would need in order to really manage stress, navigate these troubling times, and stay well. Sadly, a lot of schools have the policy of don't ask, don't tell. They don't want to know how their students are doing emotionally because then they worry about an obligation to do something to help them, or a liability if they understand, if they realize the student's being suffering trauma at home or is having suicidal thoughts. They don't want to know about it because they don't have something to do. But if they know they've got a place to send kids to. They can say, go on to GritX and use GritX. They'll be more likely to listen for and inquire about the mental well-being of their students. I've always been focused on healthcare being accessible. At UCSF, the University of California in San Francisco, is one of the most preeminent medical centers in the entire world years ago in an effort to expand capacity because waiting lists were 3 months long. Even if you were struggling with self-injury or drug use or suicidal thinking, it'd be a 3-month waiting list. We expanded our brick and mortar in-person capacity tenfold. And guess what? Lo and behold, we had 3-month waiting list again that we cannot address the need through brick and mortar, traditional hour for hour services. So we had to come up with ways of how we could scale. That is how the GritX project got started.
I started off writing content for the site, trying to give it a more like neuroscience perspective from my background, and then immediately kind of fell in love with the project and the site as a whole.
So at UC Berkeley, I had a mental health crisis. I needed to see a therapist, but there was weeks long. It took 3 weeks before I was able to see a therapist. And that's kind of when I realized that there is a systematic problem in our mental health care system. Really what appealed me to Dr. Norman's vision of scaling therapeutics and making them more accessible is my own experience, is that when I went through a crisis, it literally, I was told, it's going to take 3 weeks before you could see the first therapist. And I was like, this isn't right. If I broke my leg, they would see me today. But because if something's going on with my brain, they're not going to see me for 3 weeks. I do believe that everybody should get the care when they need it.
Like what brought me to this project, initially sort of going through a little bit of initial trepidation, sort of this existential fear that as a psychologist, like, is digital health going to replace my job? Is it is it going to replace what I can do? And I think learning more about what this can offer, it works so well.
I was part of a queer arts collective that was doing a lot of experimental games with Twine. I had this concept for a game jam where you don't have to kill your enemies in order to win. And so that was the theme of the jam. And for my own submission for it, I created Player 2, which is an experience around taking a conflict with a real person in your life and rethinking how and reframing how you're thinking about it. So you work through this conflict, and that got picked up by the New York Times. That has been my role on the project from the start, has been to give that like consistent voice to everything on the site. So that way it feels like you're talking to a compassionate friend.
We self-reflect all the time. We forget that most people have not been taught either how to self-reflect.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a site that can benefit everyone of all ages. If you know all of the skills and master them, you'll have better relationships. You'll manage stress better. You'll become your best self. You'll be, enjoying life more. We're convinced of that.
Welcome to GritX. How are you feeling today?
Honestly, I'm pretty anxious and worked up.
Sounds like you could use some self-reflection. Let's get you to the self-interview.
Self-interview? Whoa! It's pretty much what it sounds like. So, you're feeling anxious? It's not that big of a deal. No matter how small a feeling seems, it's important. Give me those juicy deets. My dream is to go to art school next year, but my family wants me to do something more practical. What are your options here? Secretly apply to art school and hope I get a scholarship so my parents can't stop me from going. Become an accountant and make art as a hobby. Try to explain to my family that I take art seriously and hope they'll see that it's not impractical. Which option seems most authentic to you? Well, number 3. My family has supported me in the past. Maybe I'm not giving them enough of a chance. Way to go, me. I'm here for you anytime.
We are special both in that you can get a therapeutic dose, but also that we have the emotionally intelligent bot, and that's AI driven. And we're getting feedback from kids telling us it keeps me company. It helps with my loneliness, but it's fun and it's useful. So there's a lot of digital health apps out there, including digital mental health apps, some really good ones that can teach you specific things like mindfulness meditation, or can encourage you to be more active, physically. The problem, though, is that people are excited about the apps when they first use it, and a couple of weeks later they're bored because the user grows and the app doesn't. When people come back to me for a second visit or follow-up visit as a psychiatrist, they're not coming because of my warm and charming personality. They're coming back because they think I'm going to ask them a question or make a comment that gives them an aha moment. Didn't think about that. That's a good connection I should make. I'm going to reflect more. So what we have to do is create an app that grows along with the user. Some of that will be new content that we're continually adding, but a lot of it is the bot, the chatbot, the emotionally intelligent chatbot who remembers me, welcomes me back, inquires about the last problem how's it going with that last situation you described, and can point me to more skills and more ways to think and reflect about whatever the situation is. We just call it the emotionally intelligent bot, but that we think is really the key to people coming back regularly, because it will continue to challenge them.
A track athlete was really worried about their track race. And so he got onto GritX and he started talking to the emotionally intelligent bot. And he was like, I'm really worried about this race tomorrow. And the bot came back and showed a video of Usain Bolt saying, you learn from your failures and then you win again. And he took that message and he said it just brought him a sense of relief and calm, and he felt prepared for his track meet the next day. So that's just another story about how the emotionally intelligent bot connects and offers relevant content to help users.
I believe it was about a month ago of a 12-year-old girl was having some issues with her mom. Tried to call her dad. He wasn't around or wasn't able to answer at the time. So she jumped on the bot and had a chat, and the bot led her to a self interview about dealing with difficult family issues. And she reported to her dad the next day. She's like, I tried to call you about this. You weren't available, but I went and I got on the bot, and it made me feel a lot better because it was able to walk me through how to deal with the situation.
When someone feels like they're listened to, they feel like they're developing a genuine connection. I think it's so interesting because I know how this bot's built, like I know that there's not a human being on the other side of the computer screen. Yet when I was talking about my family troubles, and then it followed up a week later saying, hey, how's everything going to the family department? And I know that was just a line that maybe Autumn created. I don't know. But I read that and I was like, I feel connected to this bot. That's what the research shows, is that people are more willing to open up about traumatic and dark incidents with a chatbot system than an actual in-person.
One person told the bot, nobody understands me and nobody cares. And the bot came back and said, it sounds like you're lonely and isolated. And she said, how did it know that? He wanted to figure that out. Another typed in, I'm angry at my friend, and the bot asked, would you like some anger management skills? And I said, no, I just want to make up with my friend. And the bot said, be sure to bring your best self to the discussion, which is great advice. Don't bring your angry, mean self, bring your, kind and loving and forgiving self. So what we're finding, with the bot is there's a lot of things, a lot of dialogue that we program. So, if you say, I want to learn how to be an anti-racist, it'll come back and say, social injustice, racism is a terrible, horrible thing. Have you yourself been a victim of racial discrimination? And if you type back in, I was, pulled over just driving while black, it'll then go to a trauma interview and consider that traumatic and start telling you, I'm good at talking about trauma. Let's talk about the traumatic impact of those kinds of experiences. It will do, really well in those ways. But it's also now starting to, we're seeing the machine learning where it's starting to make connections and putting patterns together. So a woman who typed in, my boyfriend dumped me, and the bot said empathically, I wish that never happened in life. That's so hard. And then she said, I'm feeling really sad. And it came back and said, I bet you're angry too. And we didn't tell it to say that. It just figured out that those patterns go together often.
One of the things that when we internally, we call this project, we called it this since before this project, right? Trying to get the bots to understand you, well understood. That's actually like what we've been calling it for a decade. Because wanting to make sure that a bot can understand you, no one else is bothered to do that. They're kind of just running through a script. They're running through a routine. You're just like jump on the ride like at Disneyland,
This is not the next best thing to a person. In many situations, it's better than talking to a human. People are more open, they're less worried about being judged.
The way that we're doing this is, as Michael mentioned, a strong partnership with a distribution partner into the schools. That distribution partner is actually a technical one. The school districts are signing up for single sign-on, right? And we use single sign-on. We use authentication app. Actually, Salesforce invested a lot in that company. And basically enables that organization to list this as an app that then becomes available to every teacher in these schools. It's a fascinating use of technology. It makes it vetted and available, so it's trustworthy.
We really have the possibility, the opportunity to make GritX the front door to the mental health care system for many, where everybody could come on to GritX, get all of the self-care skills that they need, and our AI intelligently triaging them to the appropriate resource. So if it determines that self-care skills will be great, then it offers them content from the GritX website. And if it determines there's a crisis, it triages you to the crisis text line officer.
It's really mental health and well-being, that this is really teaching all of the skills that we provide, which collectively become a therapeutic dose of psychotherapy are nevertheless skills we all want to have. They're life skills. They're being our best self skills. They're having better relationship skills.
Everybody I know says, this is great. I mean, adults.
Yeah, adults. This is, it's really, we really intended this for kids, people 12 years and older. Yeah, even some more precocious, 9 and 10-year-olds are finding it, parts of it useful. But no, adults find it useful because every skill in there is a skill I want to master for my own personal life and well-being.
From my work with some of the youth advisors that we have, I noticed that all of them kind of go to different content on the site. We have like the self-interview, and we also have the skill studio, which are more drawn out concepts. And then we have the journal, and then we have the sketchbook for the people that are more artistically driven, in that it provides a lot of different ways of learning in the style of the content that we have, and also a lot of different perspectives and approaches to mental health.
There's actual things that you can do after reading a skill. There's ways you can practice. It's something that you can come away from and actually apply and implement in your daily life.
I knew college would be academically challenging, but I didn't realize how stressful everything else would be. I was one of the 62% of young adults that don't receive the counseling they need. I looked for help, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't afford a therapist, and my college counseling center had a months-long waiting list. But then I finally found GritX. It's a free app that offers research-backed tools to help us flourish even amid the storms of life. It equipped me with self-care and mindfulness exercises that helped keep me centered day to day. Using GritX's powerful interactive tools, I started to understand my emotions. Now I can finally open up without fear of being judged. GritX teaches me skills that help ground me when I feel overwhelmed, lonely, or just off. GritX provides shelter on rainy days and opportunities to thrive on the sunny days. Because we all deserve to grow, whatever the weather.
Right out of high school, I went to the Marines, and after that experience, after 9 years, I spent a little time in the private sector, and I realized how much mental health was affecting the veteran community, and that's what really drew me into this field, to be able to help my community first of all, but also do something where I can just help people.
This project was the perfect union of these two things, the technical and the emotional, and the ability to put all of that into one project like this has itself been a remarkably rewarding experience.
I don't know exactly how to say it, but we're definitely a paradigm shift from how existing technology companies are operating today.
To make something that is emotionally intelligent and able to have a real genuine conversation with a person, it in fact requires the person to understand that they're talking to a bot. And at the same time, our measure for success is, it's a bot, and you still have this emotional experience while talking to it.
That's really a huge part of the paradigm shift, is being able to have a higher level understanding from a bot of what a user is communicating.
What we are teaching are not trade secrets, and should not be only for the privileged few who have the dollars to make it into my office. We want anybody, anywhere in the world at any time to be able to have access to evidence-based behavioral health care. And that's the great promise of the internet. It can absolutely, scale.
Part of destigmatizing healthcare is providing access, providing opportunity, and you're helping to do just that. You're helping to make this accessible to people on a large scale that enables them to just get an introduction to it.
Providing many entry points for different types of people that have different learning processes and different parts of themselves that they want to work on. So it's really personalizable, and like we always say, it meets people where they are.
So I really see this GritX becoming really the front door to the mental health care system, intelligently triaging you to the appropriate resource so that everybody has the care that they need when they need it and how much they need it.
We want to be in every school, in every primary care setting, in every company, every company's human resources, employee well-being plan, and we want to be out there so anybody in the world can download the app for free and make use of it.
So I think there's just a general misunderstanding about what is therapy and like what can we get out of it. And I think GritX really helps tear down those barriers of entry and those barriers to personal growth and happiness.
And I think that if someone said something to me that makes my heart light up. So if they said that one line, like, I became a better me, that's what keeps me going on this job.
When I heard that story, like I knew, like, this is it, that we've got it. We've got the feeling we're going for in helping someone.
We're not being told to do something to cut a corner, right? This is actually being built for the right reason. We built a lot of bots and been very successful in building some of the best bots, and this is the one that matters.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram @GritStories for regular mental health and wellness content and to participate in the GritX community. We're excited to have you.
Just wanted to give a huge thank you from the GritX team to everybody at Dreamforce. And remember, you are not alone in this, and we got this together. Stay safe, everyone, and take care.